Hi everybody, I'm getting accustomed to this voice recorder, so I thought I'd cover the concept of lawful excuse, and that's under Article 61 of the Magna Carta again, 1215. I'm just going to talk, I think. So we're going to cover the idea of sedition as well. I know there are people out there that say that Article 61 of the Magna Carta 1215 is no longer valid, and they talk about the Pope having annulled the Magna Carta. Well, in 1216, the thing is we celebrated Article 6, we celebrated the Magna Carta in 2015, and the Pope has no authority in the British Isles, and to give the Pope authority is actually a common law crime known as a preaminuire. I don't know if I'm even saying the word right, but if you listen to Lord Kilmer's letter to Ed Heath, he details it very, very clearly. To give the Pope authority is a preaminuire, and that's akin to treason. So if you hear people claiming to be experts in common law, yet saying that the Pope annulled the Magna Carta, maybe it was an attempt, but to actually support that as if that had any lawful standing whatsoever is akin to giving the Pope authority. So I don't understand how anyone can be a common law expert whilst actually committing a common law crime by saying the Pope has authority to do any of that kind of thing. The original Magna Carta is our founding, it's the cornerstone of our democracy. This you can find out by so many people and judges, and it's just a very well-known fact. If you look on our website, you can find quotes from people, and including the Queen, and throughout the ages, that will just explain that the Magna Carta is our constitution. So the reason why there's only 4 on the statute books is because they've got the 1297 version, which is the statutory version of the Magna Carta, because the Magna Carta didn't exist when Parliament didn't exist when the Magna Carta was drawn up. Parliament came after the Magna Carta, so Parliament can't touch the actual original Magna Carta because it wasn't created by Parliament. And if you look at the history of the Magna Carta, which I've done a bit of reading from William Stubbs' Constitutional History of England, he makes the point that it was the first time that all the estates of England really worked together on anything. So it really was the first time that people started working together to make legislation, or they really had something to work together for at the time, because King John had lost Normandy. And I think when he lost Normandy, the people of England they'd already been through a bit of tumult when it came to the barons and not barons, the Norman rule. So they'd come in and out of this nobility Norman ruling, and they'd gotten some of their freedom or some of their own autonomy back, and then they lost it again, and then they got it back again. And so when John lost Normandy, they all sort of took a step away from him, and they tried, they wanted this, they wanted to have their own say in what was going on in their communities. And it was the first time the church, I've read it in another document, I'm not so great at remembering information, but it was the estates and the church and different local areas, lots of people got together over this, and London let the barons in, the Londoners, the people let the barons in, so it was actually for the people as well. And the Magna Carta actually covers all the people's rights, again, I've actually studied this more deep. So what I do is I just find people's work and I read pages from them, or I type them up, or I post links, so that this evidence can just be seen for itself in its raw form, because it's all there for you to find. It's no, like, it doesn't really make sense to me, like, that people just think they can come along and go, oh, but I'm sorry, this doesn't count because of that, and like think that their one sentenced answer, I've found often on Facebook or the internet in general. Oh, but I'm so sorry, I should disappoint you. You get that a lot. Like, oh, I'm just, well, no, they haven't disappointed me, because they've just given me like a one sentence that's tried to rebut like pages and pages and books saying completely differently. And, I have read for myself completely differently, contrary to that idea. And like, from my own research, I can safely say that Magna Carta 1215 is Constitution, and Article 61, I mean, if you look at Clause 63, it says it's for all time. It was for all time. So the 4 clauses they put into the statute books, they can repeal whatever they put into the statutes. We've just recorded some work by John Bingley, which actually really brings this home to me. Parliament can make law that is not already entrenched, but they have to stand under law that came before them. So they don't actually like have the authority to repeal law that came before. I think that's what it said. I'm just going to get my grip around that. They can't bind their successors. So actually, that means the successors can repeal government-made law. But they have to stand under law that came before them. Yeah, that does sound strange, actually, but because it's constitutional and customary. If you look at the 4 clauses that were, I don't know. Constitutional law is, and common law sort of override statute law, basically. That's what they're trying to say. So if it's common law, customary, and constitutional, it does supersede, it does override a statute if a new statute doesn't actually like stay within the bounds of that law that came before. Do you see what I mean? So so they put it into statutory form, and there's still only 4 clauses there. But one of the main ones would be that no free man can be exiled, deceased, or otherwise, departed from his lands or his money and his rights without the lawful judgment of his peers. But basically, that, again, I can't remember things off the top of my head, but it's about jury trials. And the idea about jury trials is that everybody in the land should be eligible for a jury trial, but they've actually, in 1285, which was a long time ago, took away that. So only landowners could actually become jury. But the idea is that a jury of 12, I don't know why I think it's 13, they make the decision, of whether or not somebody's actually broken a law. And in doing so, they can nullify a law or a statute. They can decide that the statute or the law is not for the people's benefit. That is where the courts were very important, and we were only ever judged by our peers. So, not, just arbitrary power or a legislation, and there's the same still stands, basically. So if I choose to stand under the invocation of Article 61 of the Magna Carta, which I do, and it actually happened, because that is the security clause of our Constitution, and that is if the powers that be or our governance are handing laws to a foreign power which is usurping our customs and our common law, and trying to impose itself on people, which is not got because our law it's got these principles in it. There's are inalienable rights, so they're like given to you. They're like it's natural law, it's common law as well. So because this has been born throughout the ages, it's just common, it's customary. Like we understand what our needs are, and we understand what it means to be free, especially after all this time. They're just enshrined, and sometimes like a foreign jurisdiction or a foreign rule or a foreign governance could be very hostile and have a totally different way of dealing with your human rights, which, well, they might not have your best interests at heart. And the oath that the Queen took was to uphold our customs and traditions and our common laws and God's laws. So and the police and the Parliament and the judiciary, the judge, the judicial oath, like, is all to the Queen, and the Queen's is to God, and the Queen's is to the people. So that's why they can't give governance to a foreign rule, because it takes the power or the sovereignty away from the Queen or the monarch, which is actually the people's sovereignty, because of that she or the monarch is supposed to protect our rights. And it's got to be the same in the court. It's got to be that our law is supreme. It has the supremacy. Like, our common law and our constitution always is trump, like, in the courts, in our own courts. And this is why handing governance to the EU was always illegal. Because I think the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, and the ECHR, I'm still looking into this, but I think that the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, it's not our English, British, ancient system of justice and rights. They don't operate in the same way. So it's very hard to find justice, I think, as well, with a foreign court. So maybe they might try and overrule, like, give it international law. But in our own courts, it's got to be our common laws, and that's, if something tries to, like, usurp that, that's treason. That's how I understand it anyway. I'm trying to simplify. And also I was looking into this, and it looked as though it's a Roman kind of law, like a civil law. And this idea that the state owns your body and your rights and can give and take away rights at will. So even the state gives you the rights, and then the state can just kind of take the rights away. And I think that is the kind of system that has kind of imposed itself on ours. And so, because we have been in, like, what is a treasonous administration for a very long time, they were rubber stamping directives from the EU, and lots of laws got passed, and statutes and laws and acts that were based on this kind of Romanesque, like, civil law, which is this idea that the state owns your rights and can give and take them. I don't, the complexity of it. I know a lot of people call it maritime law, but this foreign rule and this foreign jurisdiction and all these laws that have been made since 1911 at least, which was when the Parliament Act was put through, is apparently, like, they're all treasonable. They're very potentially, like, they're just not within the constraints of our constitution, and they don't have the proper royal assent. And it's up to the people, and that brings me back to the jury and the judiciary. It's kind of up to the people to not comply and to not give authority where it isn't deserved. And if everything is before you, you can't necessarily rely on these people to do you right, especially if they've got a track record of not doing you right. So if you know that they're not doing you right, what do you do about that? And I think that's where Article 61 comes into play. If you read the petition, from the barons, you'll see what laws they said were being actually broken. And that's what inspired them or pushed them into invoking Article 61 of the Magna Carta, which then you read the Article 61 of the Magna Carta and you get to find out why, they were compelled by their sense of duty to invoke this ancient law, because they saw it as the last ditch attempt to save our fundamental birthrights, which, lots of people aren't really aware of for obvious reasons, it being usurped and hidden and years of not being educated. So it was I think it was a very strong move, because since I've discovered it, I've been very inspired by these facts. And when you look at it can lead you somewhere else. There's always more to discover. You just know the word constitutional law, and then you can just research that, and you find there's lots there to look at. So don't just take my word for things. Do your own research. And I'm so glad you've joined me to listen to my chit chat. I might do some videos, or if you leave questions, maybe we can talk about topics together. But I don't think it's that complicated anyway. Not really. When you start looking, it all just fits into place, doesn't it? I think it's easier to understand it than it is to really talk about it. It would be better, I think, for everybody to just get behind it. I personally just don't see any other better way. And even if they're not actually behind it knowingly, a lot of people with common sense are basically living that way anyway. They know that something's not right, and that they don't agree, and that they don't, within your sovereign right to live your life freely, within the bounds of common law, do no harm. And you can't trust this treasonous regime, with these ideas that they've got of well, what's going on at the moment, this thing. Well, I won't mention it. I can't stand using the word all the time, but these if you leave the house, you might harm somebody because you might pass on something you can't see and you haven't even got symptoms of, and all this, we know this is absolute poppycock. This, to extend the idea of do no harm and common law, do no harm, to that level, that is really a perversion of the law. It is usurped. So they are using the idea that you might infect somebody if you leave your house, if you don't wear a mask, to actually go against our natural sovereign birthrights, which is the law. That is the law. It's not the other way round. And anybody out there that's aiding this crime, they could be put on a strong notice, and we've got notices for this. And if enough people stood up and got behind it and saw it for what it was, we would be able to, in my opinion, go straight to the bullseye, especially in your local areas. And I don't advocate violence or anything like that. I think due process of law, but enough people power, take your money somewhere else, and I'm going into town and I'm seeing people I'm not going in any of these places that have got track and trace. I will not do that. It's against my moral compass, and it's against the law. Aiding high treason is against the law. And we are looking at high treason. And treason is when you hand governance to foreign powers. It's when you usurp the courts, when you usurp people's sovereignty, when you usurp the constitution. That has been happening for a very long time. It is a fact, and enough people wake up to it, and the fact that these barons invoked Article 61 of the Magna Carta to say to people that we are in a state of lawful rebellion, and if you're not standing under the constitution, then you're an outlaw. and you've got no protection from the law, because how can you have protection from something that you won't stand under? We're looking at a situation where we have lawlessness and crimes are being committed and there's no redress. And the only way to get redress is really for people to get behind the law and to stand under the law and really make it known what it is they want. And to put these criminals on notice, or, you know, like if enough people stood behind it in each local area, you would get to know who is actually really pushing for something that kind of put the pressure on them to stop doing it. But I think that, yeah, it's a numbers game, and the strategy is a numbers game. And I have heard that, like, the policeman is, I think, the first sort of, that's why you have to report treason to a justice of the peace when you know about it, or it's misprision of treason, because they are sort of in between. They are like on the front line. They're in between us and them. They're the ones. They're the gatekeepers, and they need to be lobbied and, you know, to stand under their oath, like to uphold the rule of law, because that's their job. And if they're not doing their job properly, then they're just imposters. So that's all I want to say now. I'm going to try and like cover more topics as I just talk off the top of my head. I might get better at this. If you'd like to know about our campaign, I'm Danielle Davidson. I've been standing under Article 61 of Magna Carta, 1215. I took my oath in 2015, and there are case files you can read again. There's files. We've got a big Facebook group full of like so many wonderful people, and there's other works and other studies for you to do when you find our pages. Because I'm very interested in the Constitution, and so are many others, and, you know, we've compiled this work. So do find us. It's www.commonlawassent.com or patreon.com/commonlawassent. Thank you for listening, and I hope you're all having a lovely day, evening, morning, weekend, week, month. Okay, cheerio.